Uè bella gente, questo episodio è in inglese, so switch language. And we are back online from New York City. Hi everyone, how's it going? This is Jackson speaking, Giacomo Baldelli, and this is Chiamo Dopo My Podcast. Welcome to it. How are you guys doing? This is a very special episode. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because this is the final episode of our 7th season. Episode number 144. I'm super excited to wrapping up this very long season with a super special guest that I'm about to introduce to you in a second. Let me tell you something about our 7th season. We made a lot of experiments this time. We opened these new series of episodes in English, like this one, and then we had a lot of episodes that we called crossover, where I invited here creators of other podcasts and, our usual classic Italian episodes where I interviewed artists, musicians, writers, and, TV personalities, and it was great. It was a great ride. Me and Giovanni Di Raimo, the producer of Chiamo Dopo, we need a little bit of a break, but let me tell you why this episode is so important. So, first of all, if you're kind of like a fan and you follow Chiamo Dopo, you know that we're sort of like a nostalgic kind of podcast. So you have to know that back in the day, in the 90s, in Italy, in my country, 144 was a very, very interesting number because it was a code of a series of phone numbers that you could call, to have updates about, like, I don't know, gossip, celebrities. You could call 144 number to get updates about, I don't know, Matt Damon, Leo DiCaprio, Spice Girls, and they were something like $2 per minute. And so it's kind of nice to wrap up our season with a number that somehow brings back this kind of memories. But at the same time, it's a very special episode because our guest today is a great guest. I'm super honored to have him and to wrap up the season with him. I'm talking about Mark Blankenship. Mark Blankenship could be, a guest for our regular season, so to speak, but at the same time, it could be also a guest for our crossover season because he's also a creator of a podcast, and we talk about that. But also Mark is a super good friend of mine, and it's nice to finish this season with some familiar voice. I talked to him about his career in theater, in writing, and everything, and it was just such a pleasure to spend some time and to talk about things that normally we don't talk about. And this is the nice thing for me, of these phone chats. Even if I talk sometimes with people that I know, I don't know, it's a different environment somehow, it's a different atmosphere, and so we end up talking about things that we've never talked before, and that makes it even more interesting. So, guys, what can I say? Thank you so much for listening, and please don't forget to follow all our social media. Our handle on Instagram is Chiamo Podcast, and our page on Facebook is Chiamo Dopo. Don't forget to follow us on the streaming platforms where you normally listen podcasts from. Spreaker, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, on everything, just to keep yourself up to date with the new episodes and all the news that will come in the future. And something will come up, around the end of the year, like next fall or so. All these new projects that are related to Chiamo Dopo. So stay with us, stay tuned, and thank you so much for listening. This is me talking to Mark Blankenship.
Talk to you later.
I want to tell you why, specifically, I think you could be a good fit for our show. Okay? So the reason is, I don't know if you remember that I mentioned to you that this season, which is our 7th season, okay, we wanted to make like sub seasons, okay, with different themes, following different themes, right? And we picked 4 different themes, okay? And I believe you could be a good fit for each and one of them. The first one is, of course, the English, serious, so to speak. You're American, you speak English, so you're a good fit for that one. Okay, so that's one. The second one is that series that we call the crossover. Okay, crossover, it's like where we invite here creators of other podcasts, and you are one of them, so you could be a good fit for that one too. The third one is the one that we call classic, which is like the old style Chiamo Dopo episodes where we were kind of like looking for people kind of like related to music, not necessarily musicians, but really into music, not just of today, but from the 80s and 90s. And I think you're pretty much into that category as well, because you're a super expert. And the fourth one, which we inaugurated last fall, it's the guilty pleasure category, which is where we ask important people that are seriously established in their area of expertise to tell us their music guilty pleasures, the kind of stuff that they listen to, they die for, but they feel kind of like embarrassed to admit in public, And so I think you could have like a few of them as well. Am I right?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't feel guilt about any of it, but yes, I certainly have a broad array of tastes.
All right. So, I mean, this is just like the fact that you are the perfect fit for this show no matter what. But if it's okay for you, why don't we start from the beginning? Okay. Because when I think about you, and I have to say this, Mark Blankenship and I, we are good friends, great friends. So I know a lot of things about you, but maybe our, audience does not know, since we are like kind of like a podcast who's mostly has, Italian listeners. So when I think about you, I truly don't know exactly how to, identify you, like in terms of like job and career, okay? Because you are like, I don't know, you can like bounce between like, TV, movies, theater, music, and it's very hard sometimes to keep track. Does it make sense to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's say that we want to start somewhere. Okay. Let's say that you are kind of like connected to the arts, right? Could it be?
Yes.
Could it be? Okay. So where did this thing start? Like high school, when you were a kid, when you were fascinated by were you fascinated by music, TVs, movies? What was the trigger?
So I guess to back up just a little, the easiest way to describe who I am professionally is I am a critic, cultural critic.
Okay.
So I make my career has been dedicated to telling stories about the arts.
Okay.
And I have told those stories as a writer and as a podcaster and as a filmmaker.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, regardless of what kind of art I am discussing, I am always striving to craft stories that invite audiences to connect more deeply with art that they care about. It really is my strong belief that I am here on this earth as a professional to facilitate and inspire rich conversation about art, because I really believe that having rich conversation about art is a pathway to having rich conversations about everything else in our lives. Okay. I think that the more we can comprehend the art that we love and can think deeply about the reasons that we love it, the more that we learn about ourselves.
Okay.
And to answer your specific question, I started to have this inkling about myself as early as 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
I would be fascinated not just by music, television, movies, but also by why they were affecting me.
Hmm.
And by the time that I was in seventh or eighth grade, I was a critic without even knowing that that's what I had become.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would want so much to think about, how did this story get put together? How is this song shaped? How are these lyrics working? And as I got older, I just got more and more interested and more trained in doing that. So that by the time I went to graduate school, I actually was able to get a master's degree in criticism
Okay.
and really perfecting the talent. I shouldn't say perfecting, you can never be perfect at anything, but really honing the talent for
Mm.
criticism and thinking a lot about why criticism mattered to me.
Mm.
And that has led me to this career where I have been so fortunate because I get to have all of this joy in my life all the time, because I
Mm-hmm.
truly find thinking about art to be a joyous endeavor. And it's true that I have in my career covered music, television, movies, and live theater,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it all equally. Oh, and books too. And but it's all part and parcel of what makes me feel passion.
Yeah.
And to be able to have those conversations has continued to be rewarding.
Talk to you later.
It's absolutely fascinating to me the fact that, and we had a lot of guests, that, described their approach, to what they do in life, specifically when they are connected somehow with performing arts or arts in general. And the starting point was always like, I was really fascinated by music and I
Hmm.
wanted to be a musician. Or I got like I watched that movie and I truly understood that one day I'm gonna be an actor. Okay, but your starting point, it's absolutely fascinating because it shows that you were interested. You were making like a step further, to understand how that form of art was actually working, what was behind it,
Yes.
what was behind it. That's something that, again, it truly fascinates me. But like, so you're saying that the core though of your approach to art was always to write about arts.
At my core, I am a writer. And
Okay.
so it is the act of writing about these things that makes me feel the most satisfied.
Okay.
And writing has just been central to my identity for as long as I can remember,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay. But so, you're saying that, you've always been like attracted by this aspect, but like in the very, very beginning, there was no like a specific one that you were leaning toward. I'm talking about like forms of art. There was like something
Mm-hmm.
like maybe, I don't know, one of them, and then opened up the spectrum afterwards.
Right. So it was definitely pop music when
Okay.
I was in my teens that I
Okay.
was the most excited by. I always say that I have a self-taught PhD in pop music because I can remember being in seventh grade and I was in this after-school program
Yeah.
waiting for my parents to come pick me up after school. And in the newspaper, they would list every week the top 10 songs on the Billboard Hot 100.
Okay.
And I got really excited about watching the Hot 100 in the newspaper every week and seeing where the songs that I loved were in
Mm.
the top 10. And
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, that just opened the floodgates
Yeah.
to me following the charts. And actually, in the room I'm sitting in, I can see one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. There are eight books in the room I'm sitting in about the Billboard charts, and
Okay.
I have two more in another room. So I just love pop charts because I love pop music, and so
Okay.
I have I have never given up my love of pop music, and in
Okay.
fact, now I have a pop music podcast. I have a pop music newsletter.
Okay.
Even though even though pop music has never been like my staff job
Okay.
jobs have always been about writing about Broadway theater or about television,
Mm-hmm.
pop music has always been there as well, just as an equally loved, crucial part of it. I mean, I can feel myself getting excited right now just thinking about songs. And I love talking about songs. I love introducing people to songs. And I love, again, thinking about why songs are the way that they are and how they are working and how they are impacting me and other people.
Talk to you later.
This thing that you're saying about like pop music and like the charts, if you think about that, you know, like old charts back in the day, they were like this kind of like, you know, spreadsheets somehow on paper, you know, and for people like us that need some kind of like structure to remember things, I can see why you were fascinated by this kind of stuff, you know, because it was like trying to put order into like the limitless, you know, options
Yes.
of pop music that you had like out there, right? Something like that.
You know, that's a really good way of putting it. There are people in the world who are drawn to sports statistics. There are people in the world who are drawn to mathematical statistics.
Exactly.
And statistics just do create a frame around chaos. And you're right, they create a story out of the vast experience of popular music, these charts. And I like that story. I find that story very exciting.
Yeah. And, you know, now I go back to what you said before about like how you know, strive for, and you're like truly focused in like raising the bar of the conversation about arts, right? And I truly admired and, you know, I respect that because, as you know, as a new music performer, okay, I've lived my entire life surrounded by people that most of the time were dismissing the conversation simply because, you know, I play a certain kind of music that it's not so intuitive. Okay. And, you know, in order to enter the conversation, you need a little bit of effort. You know, I don't think that I play music that is like absolutely not understandable, so to speak. Okay. I think you can enter that word, but it's not that intuitive. You need a little bit of effort. And so hearing you saying that, having conversations, raising the bar of the conversation to understand what's behind a form of art. You know, it's something that I would really love to have more people like you, even in my environment, you know. So this way, I wouldn't feel like a weirdo every time that I'm surrounded by friends, you know.
Right.
I would have like people that would be like, okay, so this is not exactly, you know, what I normally listen to when I go to work, but let me try to understand what's going on here, okay? If we were like in that mindset, I think that things would be better, even like in my area. I don't know if it makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to what I believe is the most important thing about being a critic. And it is to remember that your job is not to be right. Your job is to be, your job is not to be right. Your job is to be curious.
Absolutely.
And I think that if I do anything in my professional life, I just want to encourage more curiosity. No one can have the correct opinion about a work of art. It is impossible because no opinion can be correct, but everyone can cultivate a sense of curiosity. So if they are listening to the music that you're making and it doesn't sound immediately familiar, well, then they, and I include myself in this, we can be curious enough to ask questions. We can be curious enough to listen more than once. We can be curious enough to ask ourselves questions about why we are or are not responding in the way that we are. And that type of curiosity, I think, makes it easier for the palette of our tastes to expand. Because I've also I had a teacher years ago who said to me, the older you get, the more you should like, not less. Like getting older and learning more and seeing more means that your taste should get broader, not narrower. But it so often goes the other way, where as we get older, we become less curious, and we start to harden ourselves to things that we don't already know that we like. But really, the success is letting yourself like more. And I think that being able to do that is rooted in your ability to just keep asking questions and being curious.
But this thing that you just said, it's like, this is why I believe that you are a rare personality, out there, because as you know, a great quote from a movie, it says that when you grow up, your heart dies. Right. So this thing,
is that Breakfast Club?
That's it. That's it. That it is.
Yes.
That it is. So the thing is that, this is another proof of the reasons I was saying in the beginning that you're the perfect guest for this show, because you cannot know that because the majority of our episodes are in Italian, right? So I think that yours will be something like 135, 140, something like that. But if we had to pick a theme that was a constant, theme in our conversations with our guests in the past, was what you just mentioned, the curiosity. But like curiosity that does, in my country, in my language, if you say curiosity, sometimes it also means if you're curious, you're also nosy. I don't know if it makes sense. So I just want to stress the fact that curiosity for us is what you were just describing. The fact of like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, like being humble enough to understand that there are so many things that we don't know in life, but that we could know, and like trying to push ourselves to try to understand and know as much as we can, Right. And so thank you for pointing this thing out. This is like another proof that, we're doing something good here. We're like, we're doing something really good.
Talk to you later.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your music podcast, Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs?
Sure. So as you said, Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs is exactly what it sounds like. My friend and colleague Sarah D. Bunting and I have been for years now hosting this podcast where we investigate music together. And it is built around the fact that we have been friends for a long time. We love how the other one thinks. We love how the other one feels about music. And we dive into almost anything that catches our interest. Right now, as we're recording this, as you and I are recording this, we are in the midst of a season where we are talking about every song that has won the Grammy for Record of the Year.
Okay.
And we are doing it as a tournament so that we are finally going to get down to one Grammy winner for Record of the Year that we will determine to be the ultimate best winner of that award. And it is really fun, and it's given us this opportunity to talk about dozens and dozens of songs. So there are 64 of these songs. And we started this podcast in 2016 and are still going strong. So we've been really going for a long time, but we have not run out of things to say, and we have not run out of enthusiasm for doing it.
Can I ask you like a question about the relationship that you guys have with your community? Because you build up like a strong community, right? And
yes,
and this is beautiful. Okay, but I'm curious about, I've seen, I don't know if it's like a problem that it's just like very strong in my country. It seems to me that even like talking about music and try to talk and having like a sort of conversation, right, with your audience always brings up this strong like polarization. It seems like that, when you talk about a specific thing, you bring up a lot of people. No, you should have talked about that one instead because it's better. It's always this thing. At least it's what we experience, in Italy. I believe that probably now it's not like that for you guys. But have you ever experienced anything like that in the past?
You mean a sense of competitive
Yeah,
disagreement
yeah.
from our
It seems like
listeners?
that you're talking about like music, and you always like end up like, especially like on social media, dealing with like conversations that it seems like sports conversations more. You know,
Right.
is it
Well,
something that ever happened to you guys?
I'm glad that you mentioned sports because I think that there are people who talk about sports in a way that is itself like a sport. There's
Mm,
something about the
mm,
people, some people seem to really thrive in the competition of
okay.
saying the exact right thing about whatever football player or basketball player. And I
Hmm.
think it can be true of anything.
Mm,
People get that way about music, certainly. And we have absolutely had people that have engaged with us mostly to compete with us, it feels, or to
okay.
challenge us. And
Okay.
I think that for some people that can be really fun. The act of arguing
Yeah.
in terms of ultimately winning can be appealing, but that's just not how Sarah and I are. And
Mm,
I don't want to speak for Sarah because she's not here, but
of course.
I don't like that. I
Okay.
don't want to win. I used to feel driven when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s,
Mm,
to treat conversations like opportunities to win. And then I just realized I don't want that.
mm,
So, one of the things that has made my show with Sarah so much fun, and what I think has also drawn the type of listener that we have, is that when Sarah and I disagree about a song, which happens all the time, we don't really care.
mm,
If I love a song and Sarah says she doesn't like it at all,
mhm.
I just want to know more about why. And I don't feel like it's my job to convince her otherwise. I don't think it's my job to tell her that she's wrong, and I
Mhm.
don't think it really in any way uh, damages my love of something if she doesn't like it, and vice versa. She's loved many things that I haven't felt any sort of emotion about whatsoever, or have actively disliked.
Yeah.
But we find a way to talk about that isn't about having a victor.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though I just said we're doing a season where we choose the
No, but
best
I understand
winner of the great. But
what kind of challenge or what kind of tournament it is. It's not a tournament, you
yeah,
know. I know what you're saying. Yeah, 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 yeah.
but when we talk to each other, we are not having a tournament of two. We just really want to know more, and I think that I'd like to think that the way that we talk to each other has created some ground rules for how all of our listeners talk to each other
Mhm.
and to us, which is
Yeah.
that there are no winners or losers. It's not possible to be right. Again, and like
Mm.
I was saying before, we're just here to get to know each other and listen to each other and learn more about how the other one thinks and feels about this art that we're discussing. And
Yeah.
if you disagree with me, fine. If you
Yeah.
agree with me, great. And at the end of the day, I think it has made our podcast and the community around our podcast pretty friendly,
Yeah. Okay.
because we're not there to convince other people to listen to things the way that we listen. We just
Yeah.
want to know how everyone listens in their own way.
Yeah. It's like not constantly to prove a point, so to speak.
Talk to you later.
Probably I'm very sensitive to the theme right now because, as you know, I wrote that book like not so long
Yes.
ago, and I had a few presentations back in my country, and I went back to my hometown, and I was brought back to this kind of like upbringing of rock music, okay, where it seems like that it's a sort of like religion, and it's very hard to talk about any other kind of music, and people get almost offended, you know, if you
Right.
like bring up like pop music and you dismiss certain things, and if you say, I'm sorry guys, but I think the Pearl Jam are extremely boring, you know. I mean, you go into this kind of like, you find yourself inside like these weird arguments, then and at some point you should just like stop everybody and say, hey guys, don't you realize that we're like arguing for nothing, you know, or like
Well, yeah.
it's not the kind of like conversation that we should have. That's the thing, right? We should like say, yeah, it's boring, but for me it's important. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. No, not like, hey, you don't understand, you know. That's not that, you know. So
Yeah, and I just think that when it gets to that point, there's less joy. And
yeah,
why are we
exactly,
doing this if we're not
exactly,
trying to be
exactly. Yes, yes.
it should be joyous. I have plenty of musical opinions that many people find deeply wrong, but okay, fine. I'm just gonna okay. And I would never get offended if someone told me that they absolutely despised a musician whose work I really love, because okay, I am not my taste. That's actually a thing that it took me a while to learn. When I was in my teens, especially, I thought that I was my taste.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that my taste in music was who I was, and I finally realized that that's not true. I like what I like, but I am not defined by what I like. And what then and allowing myself to realize that my taste does not make my personality, that means that I have more freedom to change, and my taste can grow and evolve because I don't need it to tell me who I am. And so I tend to like certain types of music or certain types of plays or certain types of television shows more than others. But those things are expressions of who I already was. They are not the things that make me into who I am. And again, I just think it frees me up to be more exploratory. I think we can sometimes box ourselves in the way that we talk about art. And it's like, oh, I am someone who likes rock music only. Therefore, I am now unable to hear other types of music that I might love because I can't allow myself to do that because I've somehow over-identified with this taste. And taste can be a prison in that way. And if we allow it to be something that is flexible, it can actually be a source of joy.
Oh, you're so right. Probably, like this is the reason why I'm having a hard time these days with the music that I normally play, that I've been playing for the entire life, which is the one that I mentioned before. It's because, when you do it and it's your job, you need to be a little bit obsessed by it, and I've been obsessed by it for a long time, but now I'm a little bit less. And so this causes me like some issues here and there, but this is like another story.
Talk to you later.
I went back to my country. I found like my magazines, that I still have, the magazines that I bought like back in the day, during high school and whatever. And for this podcast, I was able to track down the director of the magazine that I used to buy every month. Right. And I kind of wanted to talk to him, about that magazine and all this kind of stuff. So in order to find him, I had to track him down on social media. Right. And I found his Instagram profile. OK. And I look at the photos. There's no photos about him, but it's photos of his heroes, idols. OK. And I was like scrolling down and I realized, oh, Jesus, these are all my idols, and they're like, also like people, I used to buy that thing in the late 90s, okay? And these guys are all from mid 80s. So they were already old when I was reading about them because he was talking about them in the magazine and he was praising them in that magazine. So I just realized not so long ago that my musical taste back in the years of high school was not mine. It was because it was influenced by what I was reading. What I'm saying? And it was like weird.
Right.
But it helped me to put everything into like a different perspective, that as you said, I mean, our taste is not who we are. Our taste is like probably a layer. And it's a temporary layer, that changes,
Yes,
and
that's exactly right.
And so it's great to hear you talking about that. Before we move into a different area, can I ask you if you want? And I know, as you already said, it's kind of like difficult to ask you about this, but like, if I asked you to name a couple of musical guilty pleasures. Like people, like if you want to talk about this kind of stuff, because if you don't want to talk about that, it's okay. I mean, and I understand. But is there like maybe, I don't know, like an artist that you listen to this artist only on headphones, like the kind of stuff like, or only when you're driving, if you ever drive, when you're alone. Is there anybody like that?
My response to this question is going to be perhaps not what you're expecting, but I'm going to respond in this way.
Okay.
I am a gay man, and when I was growing up, I was made to feel like I should be embarrassed of listening to straight up pop music, and especially pop music by women.
Okay.
I had a friend in college
Mm-hmm.
who got kind of angry when he noted that a mixed CD that we were listening to in my car was all women artists. He actually seemed offended
Oof.
that there were no men on the CD that I had made.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I felt a little bit guilty about it. And I felt like I shouldn't have let him know that I was mostly listening to women. And I have finally, so I will say this, I used to feel a certain amount of shame or guilt or embarrassment for listening to things that might be perceived as too feminine. And now I do not feel that way anymore. So I would say that I like lots of music that perhaps a certain type of person would think I should feel guilty about listening to, but I sure as hell don't feel that way anymore. And I, in the course of my week, will listen to probably hundreds of songs, and they will really travel from R&B to pop to country to rock, music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, today, whatever. And music that I used to perhaps feel was not masculine enough, I no longer feel embarrassed to like. And so what I mostly think about is the guilt I used to feel, and the lack of guilt that I feel today.
So it was not a pleasure. It was not a guilty pleasure. You know what I'm saying? It was
actually the shame. It was like the shame that I allowed myself to internalize because of music that I liked. And now I don't feel the slightest. If something brings me joy, I feel no guilt. In fact, what I want to do is like talk about it. Like why does this thing bring? I mean, I can consciously understand that there are certain songs that I love that are not very sophisticated, that are completely built on recycled tropes, but okay, why do I like them so much? So I honestly, there's just nothing I feel guilty about, truly. And it's been like a sort of lifetime project of allowing myself to release that feeling.
Oh, fuck, but it sucks. I mean, because, the guilty pleasure that we're talking about, I mean, of course, with our other guests, we were talking about like the quality of music, so that's the guilty pleasure that we're talking about, right? And it's, I'm sorry that for you, it was a different kind of like issue with that music. It was not like the quality of the music itself. It's not that you were embarrassed because it's like, this is such bad music and I'm embarrassed to listen to this kind of stuff. Maybe it was great music, but the problem came from different stuff, and
right.
So
it's
not
the guilt and the shame are all wrapped up in the fact that as a quote man, I wasn't allowed to like certain things, and it's like, screw you.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. I mean,
I like what I like.
I have to say that, and I shared this thing multiple times, and I like to talk about this publicly to you. My guilty pleasure is Kenny Loggins, and I have no shame about that. When I say it, people laugh. That's the first reaction. And it takes me a little bit to make them understand that in my opinion, that's nothing to laugh about, But,
no,
that's...
I just feel like Kenny Loggins is great. The song Footloose is great. The song This Is It is great. And are those... and again, it's like we can... The more sophisticated that we can become as arts professionals, the more we can become trapped by our knowledge.
Absolutely.
And it's like, sure, maybe compared to some other types of music, certain Kenny Loggins songs are not as complex.
Sure,
but it's not like it's easy to make a simple song that is also joyful and works. If everybody could make a very simple song that other people wanted to hear, everyone would do it, but they can't. And just like taste can be a prison, expertise can be a prison. And I have also been trying. It's been a project of mine for myself in the last few years to liberate myself from my snobbishness about certain types of writing, about certain types of storytelling, because I don't want to become a prisoner of my own expertise. I can appreciate sophisticated storytelling. I of course love and am excited by, especially in writing, structurally complicated things that happen in television shows or novels or in song lyrics. But just because I can appreciate those things doesn't mean I should then consider myself to be too grand or too sophisticated or too knowledgeable to not appreciate things that are not as complicated. And I just don't want to become a prisoner of snobbish expertise in the same way I don't want to become a prisoner of my taste.
Personal question, because it's like 6 months of therapy. This question comes from 6 months of therapy, my therapy about this topic. Are you ultimately succeeding at this?
Well, yes, but I will say I will say that I am succeeding at it now because it's been something I've been thinking about for a decade.
Okay. Because this, like, all this thing that it's related to, like, even like, the all the effort that you put, in building up your skills, your expertise, like all those years of studying like crazy to become who you are. Sometimes when you try to get out of that mindset, it can be difficult. And for sure it is for me, and so this is why I'm saying that it's like months and months of therapy to understand that there's nothing bad, to get out of those core beliefs and, everything. And so I kind of just wanted to know if maybe I'm not alone in there. And so thank you.
You are definitely not alone. And I'll tell you, when I was fresh out of graduate school, I went to graduate school, like I said, for criticism, but I went specifically to a theater graduate school. Okay. So it was a drama school. Yeah. I was especially caught up in thinking about theater, plays and musicals in a very specific way, and that there were good kinds and bad kinds fundamentally. And I have realized I needed to dismantle that notion. And I've been working on it really hard for a long time.
Talk to you later.
What about now? What is your main area of working these days?
So currently, I am the reviews editor for a television news and criticism website called primetimer.com. Okay. And I am a television critic, and this is something I've been doing for just about a year. And I have written about television here and there for my whole career, but for the last year, I've been writing about television full time.
But, okay, so, there was a little bit of a pause because while you were talking about that, I went to, my nightstand where I keep my books, okay? And I have here the Prime Timer Guide to Streaming TV, where there are, like, contents written by you, right?
Yes. Okay. So that's actually how I ended up getting this job.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
The site created this book, this guide to streaming television, and I got hired to be a contributing editor to that book because I knew the publisher from work I had been doing for a long time. And the process of working on that book was so satisfying for everyone involved that I was then offered the opportunity to come on board as the reviews editor of the full site, and it was great. It has been great.
Oh my God!
But yes, that book led to this current job.
Oh, great! This is great. I mean, I love this book because sometimes now, and I was actually talking about that with not so long ago with two Italian TV critics, and we were actually talking about like how they started their work. They started with a blog, and the blog became like an encyclopedia of TV shows, and then it became a podcast. But they started like in 2010, and they were telling me, and probably you can reinforce this statement, that of course the landscape was completely different. Not so long ago. I mean, the offer, right, of content was way smaller, right? And
Yes.
now, I mean, having a book like this one that it's a sort of a guide sometimes, it's helpful, you know.
Yes.
And I still also believe, and this is like my personal thought, like in an era where apparently everybody feels they can be critics. Okay, I and they can write what they think about a movie, about a record, about a TV show, like on different kind of platforms. I still believe that we need people like you know, that have like a solid preparation, and they establish themselves as experts in a certain area, to be like those that I can look at when I need some help to understand, you know, maybe even just like for a very, you know, like direct you know, reason, which is like not to waste my time watching something,
Right.
you know, that, you know, we're
Right.
also like running here and there and living our lives. And so having someone that can say, you know what, I mean, this one, you can't, don't do it, you know, don't do it. I mean,
Right.
maybe not. That's absolutely helpful. And how do you feel like being in this position with this new website and this, you know, word of like truly watching TV and writing about it?
I love it. I feel like this is the best job I've ever had.
Okay.
When I was first starting my career, for many years, I was a theater critic and loved it, but I was freelance, so I didn't have any stability or guaranteed income.
Mm-hmm.
But now I get to do the work of writing every day, thinking and writing about art every day, but I get a guaranteed income to do it. So this feels like Shangri-La, honestly, to have landed in
Okay.
this particular position.
Awesome. So give me one, two shows that we absolutely have to watch this spring.
Okay, there is a show called Poker
Oh,
Face
yes.
that
Yes.
stars Natasha Lyonne. You know it, perhaps? Yes.
Absolutely, yes. We watched the last episode last night.
Oh, it's so good. So, and there are still, I think, 5 left to come in this season. So I can't wait to watch the next one. You watched the one that had Judith Light and
Yeah.
Esapete Murkison as the old hippies.
Yes, we did.
Oh
That
God,
was it.
brilliant!
Okay. So I'm just sharing thoughts about that. Okay, I mean the fact that it's actually shot, even like the writing, like the over impressions, you know, that look like an old TV show, right? Like from the 70s and 80s. I mean, I found that the way the plot is unraveling, you know, it's this kind of like old style TV show, you know, like the A-Team, when there was
Yes.
like the hero that was like having a journey, a trip of some reason, and was like stopping by, you know, in little towns, you know, in between, and like solve the mystery, you know, or like help people in the little town. Isn't it like a little bit like that?
Oh, it's absolutely, and it's very much like Columbo,
Exactly.
the
That
old
kind of stuff.
detective show.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, Poker Face is
Poker
great,
Face.
and it's so there's a new mystery that gets solved every week. It's the
Exactly.
actress Natasha Lyonne, and the show was created by Ryan Johnson, who also created the movies Knives Out and
Knives
Glass
Out.
Onion.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got that real mystery background and just does a great job. And then the other one I would recommend that's about to premiere, it premieres at the end of February, is a show called Dear Edward that is has stars Connie Britton from Friday Night Lights.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
the guy that created Friday Night Lights also created this show,
Oh, okay.
and it's a really wonderful drama about a. It's the first thing that happens is there's a plane crash, and there's one kid who's 12 years old. He's the only survivor, and so you spend the rest of the show watching the other survivors form this community, and this kid sort of navigating his way through, and it's a really just moving,
Wow.
very, very beautiful show about resilience and survival and love in the face of unexpected obstacles. And you know, it's nice sometimes, for me, to just watch a show that's not about crime or spies or people with supernatural abilities. It's just about people. And this is a really great show that's just about people.
Great. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. And where is it going to be on?
Yes. So Poker Face is on a streaming channel in the United States. It's called Peacock, and in Dear Edward streams on Apple TV Plus.
Oh man, I gotta do that again then, because there's too much stuff that I haven't watched on that one. I think we stopped the subscription after the last Ted Lasso, and we were like, we need to take a break because family budget. we gotta try to understand.
You can only have so many.
Exactly. You can.
Well, you know what? When we let all of the episodes of Dear Edward appear on Apple TV, and then maybe subscribe for a month.
Okay, yeah, something. I'm gonna do like a full immersion into it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, I know that you are about to start your work. Am I right? Soon. So
in 9 minutes.
Okay, 9 minutes. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of pressure to close this thing up. I just want to say, is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about? But we covered a lot of things. I think we did a good job. What do you think?
This is really perhaps a silly, nerdy thing to say.
Okay.
But I love the Italian rock band Maneskin.
Yes.
And, okay. And they're nominated for a Grammy for Best New Artist.
Yes, they are.
And as we're recording, that award is going to be handed out on Sunday of this week. And if I got to vote, I would vote for them. Yeah. And I know that after they won Eurovision, I was like texting you and Laura a lot to be like, Maneskin has reached this point in the charts, because there just aren't that many Italian acts that have had huge hits in America. Volare obviously was a huge hit in America, but that's been like 65 years ago.
Exactly. But
so it's been. I really love them, and I always, stupidly or not, I feel like I have to tell you when Maneskin is doing well on the charts.
Okay, awesome. But going back to what I was telling you, you have no idea. These guys in my country, the debate about these guys is crazy. They're like probably the majority of the population that are there, arguing about because rock music was different, man. It was not that one. These guys they're not rock music. This is the kind of conversation that we're having in my country. They don't stop like just saying, let's listen to these guys. These guys, the music is actually pretty good, and they're like staging thing. They're like pretty okay, believable, as rock stars. No, we have to, waste our time talking about this kind of stuff and not being just happy that we have Italian people like on the top of the world. That's
and
sad.
I also realize that if you win Eurovision, you don't get a lot of credibility. Eurovision is not perhaps considered the most sophisticated outlet.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what do I know? I know that their new song, "The Loneliest," is a fantastic power ballad, and I want to listen to it. That's what I know.
Awesome. Okay. All right, I am back. Thank you so much again for being with us. Thanks, Mark, for spending some time talking to me about his life. Best of luck for everything. Once again, thank you so much for listening. This has been a very, very long season. We started like a long time ago. It started like it was October, and it was the longest season so far for our podcast. So thank you so much for being with us, and don't forget to stay tuned with our new episodes and new projects. In the meantime, enjoy your spring, enjoy your summer, get some rest, and be well. Peace out.
Talk to you later.